Okay, so I want to go over stoichiometry. This is I did this on the whiteboard in my previous classes, but I'm going to try to use a PowerPoint for this. Maybe this, hopefully, this will help you out. That you can combine the two, the lectures. So the first thing is that we want to get a good idea of explaining. Uh, we in the end, what we want to do is we want to be able to explain how we use chemical equations to actually make stuff and how much of a certain stuff materials you can make and how much you're going to need and so forth. But the best way to kind of do this, I think, is to think about something we already know, and that's using recipes, cooking recipes, because basically when we do chemical reactions, chemical equations are nothing more than recipes. And so the idea is, I think intuitively, a lot of us, most of us, probably know how to do cooking. We just have to think it out a little bit. And so I'm going to go through this first part lecture is actually going to go through a thinking process of how we would make a certain amount of material. In this case, what we're going to do, I'm going to make pancakes, okay? And it's going to be a real simple recipe that hopefully you can follow. And I'm not going to use any crazy numbers that you're going to have to pull out your calculator and get all caught up in the math. I don't want to get caught up in math. I want to get caught up in what makes sense. So let's say I have a recipe, and what I have 2 cups of milk, 1 cup of flour, and a half cup of sugar will make 1 cup of pancakes, okay? Don't worry about cup pancakes, okay? Just that's what I call it. So I'm going to do a couple of practice problems, thinking problems. So the first one says, if I want to do 10 recipes, how many cups of each one of the recipes, ingredients, am I going to need? Okay, so let's word it out. So we have 2 cups per recipe, and you do that 10 times, okay? So 2 cups 10 times is 20 cups. So if we look what we did 2 times 10, okay? All right, so over here, next one is that with 1 cup of flour per recipe, I have to do the recipe 10 times, so that means I'll need 10 cups. Again, it's 10 times. And finally, I have 0.5 cups per recipe, and I need to do that 10 times. So if you have 0.5 10 times, it'll end up with 5 sugars. Okay, so one thing I want you to see here, all right, is that if you want to go, if we look at what you did, okay, so given the recipes, we could figure out the amount of cups. And what we had to do is multiply by the number of cups per recipe. Hopefully that makes sense. Now don't worry about this, but it's good to know what we just did. We did recipes, cups per recipe. We did times how many recipes we need, and we got our amount. Don't try to memorize this. Okay, just makes sense. You have 2 cups per recipe. You do it 10 recipes, so it's going to be 20 cups. Now let's go the other way. Suppose you have 4 cups of milk, all right, using the same recipe. How many recipes can we do? Well, each recipe, you have 2 cups of milk. So what you can do is divide the 4 cups into 2 cups per recipe. So you can think about it as if you got 4 cups. And every time you do it, you need 2 cups. So you just could divide it into 2. So you got 2 recipes. All right. So hopefully that makes sense. So if you want to go from cups to recipes, okay, what you did is you divided by the cups per recipe. Okay. All right. So if you notice, in the previous example, if you want recipes of cups, you multiplied. Okay, and that will, it makes sense. It just is a memorization, and I'll show you how that works. So now let's say I have So now I can make 2 recipes. Right, and 2 recipes. So for every recipe, I need how many cups of sugar and flour will I need? All right. So I need 1 cup of flour per recipe, and I'm going to do it 2 times. So I need 2 cups of flour. The recipe says I have 0.5 cups per sugar. Sugar per recipe, and I need to do that time. So 1 cup of flour. Sugar. so if I start out with 4 cups of milk, I'll need 2 cups of flour and 1 cup sugar. And so I'll also make 1 cup per recipe. I'm doing 2 recipes, so I'm going to end up with 2 cups of flour. Okay. So 4 cups of milk will give me 2 cups of flour, 1 cup of sugar, and 2 cups of pancake. Okay, so let's draw this out in a way that maybe you can follow through using a diagram. Okay. So I'm going to set up what I call a recipe table. And the recipe table is going to have recipes, cups for recipes, and cups. Okay, so here's my recipe. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I have recipes, cups for recipes, and cups. So this guy in the middle is the relationship between the recipes and cups. And so I have 2, 1, and 0.5, and 1. So let's go back to the first problem. So if I want to do 10 recipes, how many cups of each will I need? Well, we just did that in thinking. Now let's use the diagram, right? So what I'm going to do is put 10x in the recipes. Okay, and then whenever you come up with your recipe table, make sure you put this in. All right, cups of recipes, that's the same as these values here. Okay, so these are unchanging. All right, so I have 2, 1, 0.5, and 1. All right, so every time I do it, I need 2, so I'm going to do it 10 times, so 20. Okay, every time I have 10, every time I do it, I have 1, so it's 10, 0.5 10 times, 5, and 10, 1 10 times is 10. And you'll see, go back and look previous, that's what we got from just thinking about it. So one of the things you'll notice when you set up this table is that whenever you go from recipes to cups, you'll multiply. And if you notice, which means you go down, and the number will always get bigger. So what I mean number is a 10. Well, 20 is bigger than 20. And that's because you get more. You're multiplying, okay, out of. Okay. All right, so now let's look at the second problem. This is where we started with 4 cups of flour. I want to know how many recipes I can do, and then how many cups of flour and sugar and pancakes. Well, I'm going to set up the recipe table, just like I did before. But now I'm going to start out with 4 cups of milk. So first thing I need to do is find out how many recipes this makes. So I'm going to divide the 4 into groups of 2, or 2 cups per recipe. So you divide going up. Okay, so now I can do the recipe 2 times. So I bring the 2 over across, okay, because I can do the recipe 2 times. So how much of every else thing I need? So if I can do the recipe 2 times, every time I do it, I need 1. Okay, so there's going to be 1 2 times is 2. Okay, same thing here. I do 0.5 2 times, 1, and then 1. All right, so the key is that you have to figure out the number of recipes. And the way to figure out number of recipes is you divide by the cups per recipe. What you're doing is you're dividing the cups into their amount of recipes. All right, now let's suppose I want to make 1,000,000 pancakes. All right, or you could say 1,000,000 recipes. So we just use the table. So if you have a million recipes, you need 2 million cups, a million cups, 500,000, a million. Okay, the problem with this is it would be really hard to measure 2 million cups. Just think about it. 1 cup, 2 cups, 3 cups. All right, that would just be overwhelming. However, we can use a trick, and that's to use a relationship between the amount of the cups, and how much they weigh. So, for instance, let's say a million cups weighs 100 pounds. Okay, so if I want of milk, so if I have 100, so I know, and I just know I have to figure this out. So let's say a million cups of milk weighs 100. So if I want 2 million cups, what am I going to do? I'm going to simply weigh out 200 pounds, and that's easy. It's a lot easier to weigh out 200 pounds than it is to measure 2 million cups. So what we can do is we can count, right? So I don't have to count the 2 million. I can weigh out 200, okay? So, but I have to know the relationship between the cups and how much they weigh. And so let's say this is a relationship. I know it's different than what I just had up in the previous example, but let's say that 1 cup of flour weighs 2 pounds. 1 cup of milk weighs 2 pounds. 1 cup of flour weighs 1 pound. And 1 cup of sugar weighs 3 pounds. Okay, and let's use this relationship to do a couple problems. Okay, so let's do a couple thinking problems. Suppose you want 10 cups of each one of the ingredients. Right, I want to know how many pounds. So how many pounds? It should be how many pounds of each. Okay, well, there are 2 pounds per cup of milk. I need 10 cups. So how many pounds would that be? It'd be 2 pounds 10 times for 20 pounds of milk. Right? This should be flour. So 1 cup of flour, 1 pound of flour, 1 pound per flour, a cup of flour, and I need 10 cups, so I'll end up with 10 pounds of flour. And finally, if I have 3 pounds per cup of sugar and I need 10 cups, I would have to do 3 pounds 10 times for 30 pounds of sugar. Okay, I can set up a table here, kind of like the recipe table. I'll call this a pounds per cups table, where I put the 10 up here. Okay, I put in the pounds per cups. So if I have 2 pounds per cups 10 times, and give me 20 pounds. 1 pound per cup 10 times would be 10 pounds. And 3 pounds per cup 10 times is 30 cups. Okay. And if you notice, the way the table is set up is that when we go down, we multiply. Okay, and this is a different table. This is cups per pound table, but it's like the recipe table that when we went down, we multiplied. And guess what? When we go up, we'll divide, which is this problem. So let's say I have 60 pounds of milk, and I want to know how many cups that is. Well, I have 60 pounds. Each cup is 2, so I'm going to divide the 60 pounds into 2 pounds per cups. So you have whatever 60 of these things. So there's 60 pounds over here, and you break each one into 2. Okay, you'll end up with 30 cups of milk. All right. Okay, so let's apply this to the recipe bit as well. Okay, now let's combine the two ideas. Suppose I want to do 500 recipes, and I want to know how many pounds of each of the ingredients I need. So that should be ingredients. Right. First, the recipe is in cups, so we can find a number of cups of each. So I have 500 recipes, and I know that the recipes has it in cups per recipe, so I need to do that. But finally, but that's not going to be what I want. I want pounds. But you can't go directly from recipes to pounds. First, you have to figure out how many cups there are. Then once you figure out how many cups there are, you can figure out the number of pounds. So 500 recipes. So let's put the 500 in each slot here. Okay, so every time you do a recipe, you need to do that 500, so you need 1,000 cups of milk. Okay, for flour, each time you do one, you need 500. So 500 times is 500 cups flour. And then for sugar, it's half a cup per recipe. Do that 500. So you need 250 cups. So these are the amount of cups. Okay, now you know. So we'll bring that down to our pounds per cups table. So put the 1,000 here, 500 here, and the 250 here. Okay, so you know that there's 2 pounds per cup. Okay, and do that 1,000 times, so that's 2,000 pounds. All right. For the flour, 1 pound per cup. You need 500 cups, so that's gonna be 500 pounds. And then finally, 3 pounds per cup of sugar. Do that 250 times. You end up with 750 pounds of sugar. So 1,000 cups of milk plus 500 cups of flour plus 250 cups of sugar. Okay, and that will make 500 cups of pancakes, 500 recipes. All right, well, that's the same as measuring out 2,000 pounds of milk, 500 pounds of flour, and 750 pounds of sugar. Okay, let's try another one. Let's say I have 10,000 pounds of flour, and I want to know how many recipes I can do, how much sugar and milk I will need, and how many pancakes I will make in terms of pounds. Okay, so again, the recipes is in cups. So we have pounds. So what we have to do is, first of all, get the cups in the pounds in the cups. And then using the recipe table, we can figure out the recipes. All right, so the first thing we'll do is use the pounds per cup relationship. So I have 10,000 pounds of flour. Okay, every cup weighs 1 pound. So I divide that in by 1 pound per cup. And so that means I have 10,000 cups of flour. Now I'm going to transfer that to the recipe table. So I have 1,000 cups of flour. Every time I do it, there's 1 cup, so I'm going to divide 10,000 in a 1 cup per recipe. So I can do the recipe 10,000 times. Okay, so for 10,000 pounds, I can do the recipe 10,000 times. Okay, so let's go and figure the rest out. Okay, so since I can do it 10,000 times, how much am I going to need of milk? How much of the sugar I need, and how many pancakes am I going to make? So I'm going to do 10,000 recipes, because that's what this tells me. Okay, every time I do it, I need 2 cups per recipe, so I'll need 20,000 pounds. I already started out with this, and then I'll need 20,000 cups milk and 5,000 cups of sugar. Now I want to figure out how many pounds this 5,000 and this 20,000 is. Well, so I have 20,000 cups. Each one weighs 2, so that means this can weigh 40,000. Okay, I have 5,000 cups. Each one weighs 3, so I have 15,000. Okay. So if I have 10,000 pounds of flour, I will need 40,000 pounds of milk and 15,000 pounds of sugar. So there is two processes here. So you have, if you're given pounds, first of all, you have to figure out how many cups that is using this pounds cup relation. And then once you figure out the number of cups, you can figure out how many recipes using the recipe table. So there's two different tables here. Okay. So actually what we could do is we can combine the two tables. And that's because both tables have cups in them. And that's what we're going to do next. Okay, so if you look at the two tables, you'll see that they both have cups. And so what you can do is you combine these two tables. So you know there's 20,000 here and there's 20,000 here. 10, 10, and 5, 5. So if you combine the two tables, you end up getting this thing right here, where you actually have two tables. You have recipe cup table, and then you have cup and pound table. So what we're going to do, we're going to use this table here that combines both of those tables to do our problems. So let's look at the last two problems we just did and use a combine. So I want to do 500 recipes. Okay, so I put 500, 500, and I want to know how many pounds of each one of the ingredients I'm going to need. Well, so I have 500 recipes. Okay, I know that there's 2 cups per recipe, so that's going to be 1,000 cups. So 500 times is 1,000. Okay, now I can keep going. So each cup weighs 2 pounds. I do that 1,000 times, so that's 2,000 pounds. So if you look at the previous example, I just did the two tables in one table here. Right, 500. Every time I do it, I need 1. So I'm going to need 500 cups. Every cup weighs 1 pound, so that's going to be 500 pounds of flour. And then over here, 500. Half a cup per recipe, so that's going to be 250, and then 3 pounds per cup, so there's going to be 750 pounds of sugar. So you notice as we went down, we multiplied. Also notice is that you're given this value here and this value here. Okay, this value here comes from this number in front, and this number comes from the relationship between the pounds and cups, which you'll be given. Okay, now let's do the second problem. So let's say you have 10,000 pounds of flour. All right, so we put that right here. Okay, so what I want to do now is I want to find out so I have to figure out how many recipes I can make. So I need to find out how many cups. So there's 1 pound per cup, so I divide this by 1,000. 10,000 by 1, I mean. So I'll end up with 10,000 cups of flour. Every recipe only uses 1 cup, so I am going to end up doing the recipe 10,000 times. So if you notice, I go up, I multiplied. All right. Okay, so to do 10,000, so if I have 10,000 pounds of flour, I can do the recipe 10,000 times. So put those in their respective spots. So 10,000, do 10,000 times. So it's going to be 20,000 cups. Each cup weighs 2 pounds. So that's going to be 40,000 pounds. All right, so flour, so we just did the flour. That was the first one. So let's figure out how many sugars. 10,000 recipes. Every recipe is a half a cup. So that's going to be 5,000 cups. And then each cup weighs 3 pounds. So that's going to be 3 pounds, 15,000 times. 3 times, 5,000 times. So that's going to be 15,000 pounds. Now, if you notice, one thing is to notice is that, so that'd be 40,000, 10,000. So the overall, so you'll have 65,000 pounds of pancakes. Okay. Okay, so that's how you do these. I will give you there's going to be a couple of problems here. I'll just add on Next slide. Okay, here's a couple problems for you to try using the same table in relationships. So you should just turn this off and then come back to it when after you tried them. So the first problem says if you have 200 recipes, how many cups of flours we need? Second one says if you have 30 recipes, how many pounds of milk? Third problem, if you have 450 pounds of sugar, how many cups of sugar is this? And then how many recipes can you make from the 450 pounds of sugar? And finally, if you have 3 pounds of milk, how many pounds of sugar and flour will you need? All right, so use this table for all 4 problems. Okay, so for the first problem, it says you have 200 recipes. Okay, so let's find out how many cups of each one of the recipes. So if you have 200 recipes, each recipe need 2, so that's going to be 400 here. Okay, I know the problem said if you have 200 recipes, how many cups of flour you need. Each recipe need 1, so that'd be 1 200 times, or 200. And then you can figure out the rest of them. So for sugar, you have 0.5 cups per recipe. Do that 200 times, and that would be 100 cups. Okay. So from recipes, you can figure everything out. Then what you could do is go down to pounds. Just multiply by the associated relationship. All right, next problem says if you have 30 recipes, how many pounds of flour we need? Okay, so this is combining the 2 relationships, the recipes of cups and cups to pounds. So first of all, you want to find out how many cups that is. So if you have 2 cups per recipe, you do that 30 times, you end up with 60 cups. And each cup weighs 2 pounds, so you're going to do 60 times for 120 pounds of milk. So if you need to do 30 recipes, you need 220 pounds of milk. And you can do the rest over here as well. Okay, just multiply down. Okay, next problem. If you're given 450 pounds of sugar, you want to know how many recipes, how many cups that is, and then how many recipes. Okay, so the first thing you can do is you can divide the 150 into 3 pounds per cups. So you'll end up with 150 cups. All right. Every time you do a recipe, you only need a half a cup. So you can do 150 divided by 0.5, so you can do the recipe 300 times. Okay, so if you notice, when you go up, you divide. But you have to set the table up and it has to make sense, okay? All right, and finally the last problem is if you have 300 pounds of milk, okay, how many pounds of flour and pounds of sugar will you end up getting, okay? All right, so and we'll do the whole thing. We'll fill in the whole table just to see how this all relates. So first of all, find out how many cups. So every time you do the recipe, you need 2 cups. So you divide the 300 into groups of 2. So you end up 150 cups. Okay. Every time you do the recipe, you need 2. So 150 divided into groups of 2. So you can do the recipe 75 times. Okay, so just bring 75 all the way across. Okay, every time you do the recipe, you need 1 cup of flour. So you do that 75, so you need 75 cups. Each cup weighs 1 pound, so it's going to be 75 pounds. Okay, if you so again, so if you have 75 recipes, each time you do it, you have 0.5. Okay, so multiply that by 0.5. So that's 37.5 cups. So 37.5 cups to do the recipe 75 times. Each cup is only half a recipe, so you don't need, so it's 37.5. Every time you do it, there's 3 pounds. So you have to do 37.5, 3 pounds, 37.5 times, and so that'll be end up with 112.5 pounds of sugar. Okay, so there's the thinking about in terms of recipes. The next thing you're going to do is tie this together with chemistry. Okay, so the last part on this is, before we go on to the next PowerPoint, is how this relates to chemistry. So what we're going to do is we're going to replace the recipe with a balanced equation, because balanced equation just is a recipe. It says 1 C3H8 plus 5 O2s gives me 3 CO2s and 4 H2Os. Now, instead of using cups, okay, this number in front is not going to be cups, it's going to be moles. So this can be 1 mole. For every time I do the reaction, this will be 5 moles, 3 moles, and 4 moles, okay? All right, so what I'm going to do is assume the one thing right now that I'm just assuming, and then it's important just to get this, if you take an advanced class, you'll get more into it, but you have to do is now, in chemistry, we can't count moles because they're just too big. So we have to do a relationship just like pounds to cups. We have to have a relationship between grams per mole. And so you have to know how much 1 mole of each substance is. So 1 mole of C3H8 is 44 grams. Now how do I get that? Well, there's 3 carbons, so it's 1, 2, 3, and H, and 8 H's, okay? Okay, each carbon weighs 12, so it's 12 plus 12 plus 12, and each hydrogen is 1. So it'd be 36 plus 8, and this is grams, so 44 grams per mole. O2, each oxygen weighs 16, so it's going to be 16 plus 16, or 32 grams per mole. Carbon dioxide is 12, and each oxygen is 16, so it's going to be 12 plus 16 plus 16, 44. And for water, each hydrogen is 2, and oxygen is 16, so 18. And now these numbers, okay, so here's how you set up the table. This row here is the same as the recipe relationship. So 1 mole, every time you do the reaction, 5 moles, 3 moles, and 4 moles. Okay, and the moles per gram is, you put the information from here, 44, 32, 44, and 18, okay? And then, so to do these, to do stoichiometry, what you need is you need 2 things. You need a balanced equation, and you need the molar masses. And then you plug them into the table, and then you'll be doing the same sort of operations, okay? Which we will go on from here. But let's stop here, and we'll do the next video, which relates to this.